שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך.
Shalom, everybody. Shabbat shalom, and welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. As you can see, I am Hakham Melech Rahmiel, and I almost forgot my name there for a second. Melech Rahmiel ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and we have a great Torah study for you today. So I hope you're all joining us from wherever you are on this beautiful Shabbat, this 18th of April 2026, and I'm broadcasting to you live from the Golan Heights, the beautiful Golan Heights in northern Israel. And we're going to be speaking about a bunch of stuff today. And so I'll give a kind of update on where I see the state of Karaitism based on my experiences here in the Golan Heights. So I live in a city here in the Golan Heights, and pretty much everybody in the English-speaking community, at least at this point, or at least a lot of the English-speaking community, knows my nitiot, knows my tendencies regarding Karaitism. So I belong while we're building up, or until we've built up an actual Karaite community. I'm attending a rabbinical synagogue most of the time. We are having regular Karaite meetings here, but not on Shabbat. So I attend a regular synagogue, a rabbinical synagogue, and everybody there know exactly who I am and what I believe and all of this kind of stuff. And it's a very kind of eclectic bunch, very open, and they accept me for the most part. Actually, they really more than accept me. I think a lot of them, are very fascinated by Karaitism. They're very fascinated by the Tanach-only approach. A lot of these people are brainwashed, just as when I first got back into Judaism. So I grew up, many of you know my story already, but I grew up in a conservative Jewish home in the suburbs of New York. Went to Hebrew school, ate bagels and lox, went to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, and sometimes I was dragged there by my father on Shabbats, but I just never connected to it, and I completely left it pretty much after my bar mitzvah when I was 13 years old. And then many years later, for various reasons, I started getting interested in religion and Judaism, and eventually Judaism again. Found my way back, moved to Israel in 1993, and I didn't know anything. I mean, I shouldn't say anything, but I knew very, very little about Judaism. I only knew what I had been taught in Hebrew school, which was essentially 3 times a week, 2 hours a day. It was just, religious after school instruction, which was very little. And whatever little I'd known, I pretty much forgot. I didn't know how to speak Hebrew. I knew a couple of scattered words here and there. I remembered how to read Hebrew, thank God, but, remembered some basics, but really not much more than that. And so when I came to Israel, I wanted to learn more about Judaism. That was the reason that I came to Israel. I said to myself, if I'm going to learn this thing called the Torah, what am I doing here in New York? Let me hop a plane and go to Israel. And my intention was to stay for the summer and then see how I liked it, and then decide afterwards. And kind of in the back of my mind, I knew that I would never be coming back to the United States. And that's kind of true. I did come back for a bunch of years, but I knew that even when I was back there, it was temporary. And so I've been back in Israel for a while now. At any rate, the point is that when I got to Israel, I wanted to know about Judaism. I wanted to know about Torah. So who do you go to? You go to the rabbis. You go to yeshivas. You start learning from the official, or the people who present themselves as the official representatives of Torah. So I went to a certain yeshiva named Desha Torah, and then I went to another one, and then another one, then I learned with a certain rabbi, and blah, blah, blah. Over a process of about, the next couple of years, I was heavily indoctrinated into the cult. That's what it is. It's a cult. So the cults ask you to do a number of things, and I'm not an expert on cults, so I'm just saying it off the cuff here. But one of the things that cults ask you to do is suspend your internal your basic sense of what is real and what is not real. In other words, you're gonna have to wait, Suda. In other words, they gaslight you. That's the popular word these days. Everyone's gaslighting everybody. If you go to McDonald's and it says on the board hamburger for $2.59 and they charge you $2.61 by mistake, then the person accuses the person behind the counter of gaslighting them. Everyone's gaslighting these days, but that really is gaslighting. That's where they and it's a technique that they perfected over millennia, over 2 millennia. They perfected the technique of slowly but surely allowing you to suspend your internal, I should say, your internal sense of what is true, what is not true, what is right, what is wrong, what makes sense, and what doesn't make sense. And so it's an indoctrination process. And in fact, the first yeshiva I went to, named Aish Torah, really, they have a whole process where they almost funnel you through a number of stages where they get you into the indoctrination process, because they're starting with people who had never or had very either no or very little exposure to Judaism. And in fact, this yeshiva Aish Torah was put on, I don't know what cult list, but one of the official cult lists. I don't know, maybe this was 10, 15 years ago. They've since been taken off because they don't like being on a cult list. So I don't know what they did. They probably paid someone off to clean up their act or something, or to take them off the cult list, or maybe clean up their act. I have no idea what they did. Who the heck knows? At any rate, the point is you get indoctrinated into the system, and suddenly, as the rabbis like to say, if the rabbis tell you left is right and right is left, believe them. And that's what you start doing. You start suspending. You get so indoctrinated into the system, and you start thinking. You start getting so used to thinking in this distorted way, or start getting used to suspending reality, suspending your basic sense of reality, that it's after a couple of years, I won't say for everyone, but for some people, for many people, it's already too late. You're already inducted into the cult. You're already indoctrinated into the cult. You'll already believe whatever the cult tells you to say. If the cult tells you that left is right and right is left, you'll believe it. If it tells you that war is peace and peace is war, you'll believe it. Right? It's like 1984 level. It's like 1984 style indoctrination. It really is. So I was at somebody's house last night for Shabbat meal. I shouldn't say Shabbat meal because I'm actually fasting. So for the past 7 days, this is my 7th day I've been fasting. I've been drinking only water, coffee, and tea. And I'm ending the fast in another 2 days. So I'm fasting tomorrow and Monday, and then I'll start eating it again on Tuesday. At any rate, so I was at somebody's house for the Shabbat meal, drinking tea and smelling the meal, but not eating it. And so we started having, this is one of the people in the community here that I have regular discussions with about Karaism. And I started speaking to him about Karaism and Judaism. And he always likes to engage these conversations. And he said something like, I'm trying to remember his exact words. Right. He said, the world is irrational. This is why I believe in, I kid you not, you can't make this stuff up. Hold on a second. I'm just going to turn on the light here. He told me the reason that he knows that rabbinical Judaism is irrational, and I'm paraphrasing him. So if he ever listens to this and I'm misquoting him, my apologies. You can come on the air and correct it, but I think I'm quoting you more or less correctly. He said, the reason that he follows rabbinical Judaism, he knows it's irrational, but the world is irrational. That's why I follow rabbinical Judaism. I know it's irrational, but the world is irrational. That is his justification. That's his rationalization. That's his explanation for following it in something which he admittedly says is irrational. And he says, and then he gave me the example of pi. Pi is an irrational number. You can't express it as A over B. In fact, it's a transcendental number, not an irrational number, but that's another story. And, we all know things in the world that have happened that are completely irrational, that can't be explained. So the world is irrational, and I follow rabbinical Judaism. And the other reason he said is that's what my father followed. So I follow it because my father followed it. And I said, yes, your father followed it. But if you go back far enough to the beginning rabbis, their fathers did not follow it. So yes, you're following your father who is following his father, who, if you go back far enough, was following someone who was veered off the correct path onto this distorted version, onto this, as by his own admission, this irrational version of Torah. So he asked me, do you think the world is rational? Do you think God is rational? I said, yes, 100% the world is rational. 100% God is rational. We may not understand his reasoning for things, but of course, the world is built on ration and logic, and maybe logic's the wrong word, but on the rational thinking of Yahweh. And so if we ever read the Torah, and then I further said to him, if you read the Torah, the actual words of the Torah, without the rabbis, without the rabbinical interpretations, if you read the words of the prophets, you'll see they're very direct, they're very logical, they're very rational. These are messages that are direct to the people. There's nothing confusing about them. There's nothing irrational about them. There's nothing crazy about them. And then you go over to rabbinical source. So I was learning, okay, here we go. I was learning today with another friend of mine here in the community, and he loves to learn midrash. So we learned a midrash. Okay, I'm probably going to get this a little bit wrong, and I'm not going to go look it up right now, as to why. So it says that after Amnon, if you know the story of Amnon and Tamar, they were both sons of David. Amnon had a serious crush on his half-sister Tamar, who was a full sister of Absalom, and Absalom ends up later killing Amnon. At any rate, so Amnon ends up essentially raping Tamar, and then after he rapes her, this is in the Tanakh. This would be in, I guess it's going to be in Shmuel Bet, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct on that? Shmuel Bet? Yeah, Shmuel Bet probably. Anyway, what was I saying? Right, that's 2 Samuel, by the way. Okay, so what was I just saying? Right, so now I'm learning this midrash, which is rabbinical kind of exegesis, explanations, whatever you want to call it, rabbinical explanations. And it said afterwards that Tamar, I kid you not, you can't make this up, Tamar took one of her, and I might be misquoting it, but I'm quoting it correctly if I remember it. Tamar then killed Amnon, or tried to kill Amnon. And how did she do it? She took one of her pubic hairs, you can't make this stuff up, and pulled it off, and then tried to strangle Amnon with her pubic hair. And then, so then this midrash, this rabbinical exegesis goes on and says, well, how is this possible? It says that it says somewhere, and they quote some verse somewhere, that all of the Israelite women, all of the Jewish women at that time, shaved the hair off of all of their body, everything, if you know what I mean, right? So how could she have done that? And then it goes on to say that since Tamar was not a full Israelite, her father was David, but her mother was a non-Israelite, that she did not shave all of her body hair, including her pubic hair. So she had pubic hair, so she could pull one of them off and try to strangle Amnon to death with her pubic hair. Okay, this is the insanity, the absolute insanity, that this is the irrationality that my friend, who shall remain nameless, was talking about when he said the world is irrational, and that's why I follow rabbinical Judaism. Rabbinical Judaism is irrational. I know it's irrational, and the world is irrational. So therefore, I guess, negative times negative equals positive. If the world is irrational and rabbinical Judaism is rational, then I guess somehow that makes it rational, right? But the insanity of some of these things you learn, and of course there are plenty of apologists for rabbinical Judaism who are then going to come along and say, oh, it doesn't really mean that. It's trying to teach a lesson, or it was written during the time of the Romans and we couldn't say certain things, so it was encoded with, pubic hair really means, learning the Torah, or I don't know, or God knows what. They'll come up with all of these apologetic excuses for why these midrashim are so irrational. I won't use the word crazy. I'm going to use the word irrational from now on, because it ties back to the first person that I was talking about, right? So this is the level of irrationality. This is the level of craziness. This is the level of insanity that our people have descended into. And then we ask, is it any surprise that the rest of the nations, they can't tolerate us? They can't stand us. They look at us and we're the laughing stocks of the world, as is predicted in the Tanakh, if we go away from the Torah. Now, even if we follow the Torah perfectly, it's true that there will always be those that hate the people of Israel. There'll always be nations that, even if we're following the Torah perfectly, will hate the people of Israel. But if we're not following the Torah, the Torah of Yahweh perfectly, we're veered off the track to such a crazy, insane, irrational form of Torah, actually a derivative religion of Torah known as rabbinical Judaism, then what chance do we have? Then we can't even distinguish between those nations that actually would love us if we were following the Torah correctly, and those nations that even if we were following, that would love us, and those would hate us even if we were following the Torah correctly. In other words, rabbinical Judaism is a major source of anti-Semitism in the world. It's one of the main reasons, perhaps the main reason, no, not perhaps, the main reason that the other nations hate us is because of rabbinical Judaism, because our nation, 2,000 or so years ago, veered off the course. We'd already veered off the course many times before, but this is the longest time we veered off the course. We veered off the course, followed this up and coming, this new Greek influenced, Roman influenced, Zoroastrian influenced sect known as the Pharisees, which took us far away from the Torah, instituting or bringing about and essentially forcing on the nation by hook or by crook, or convincing the nation to following this derivative religion, which is not Torah. It is a derivative religion of Torah, just as Christianity is a derivative religion of Torah. It's based ultimately on the Tanakh. It's a distortion of the Tanakh, but it's based ultimately on the Tanakh. That's why there's a New Testament and the Old Testament. Just as Islam is a derivative religion of Torah, also distorted, not as much as Christianity, but also distorted. But ultimately, if you ever read the Quran, the Torah is quoted, I don't know how many times, many times. The prophets of Israel quoted many times. The Quran, a lot of it is essentially Muhammad, or whoever wrote it, will say Muhammad's interpretation and understanding of Torah, and building a religion for his people based on his interpretations of Torah and that which was appropriate for his people. And then the third derivative religion, so we have Christianity is a derivative religion of Torah, Islam is a derivative religion of Torah, and rabbinical Judaism is a derivative religion of Torah. It is not Torah, it's a derivative religion of Torah. And in fact, if I were to rank them, I would say that if you rank them, then the closest of those three religions to true Torah is actually Islam. And I'm not talking about crazy Islam where they're cutting off hands, chopping off heads, although of course there is death penalty also in the Torah, but there is no cutting off hands for stealing, right? You return double the amount. But the more moderate forms of Islam that I've encountered, and I've been in a number of Muslim countries, some for long periods of time, like Morocco. I spent about 9 months of my life total in Morocco. I was in Tunisia, Turkey, and even here in Israel. I have contact with some of the Muslims, the Jews, etc. So the less extreme forms of Islam, I would say that's the closest actually to Torah, and then it's a close call between rabbinical Judaism and Christianity. I guess I'll have to give number 2 place to rabbinical Judaism, because at least they're not outright idol worshippers. At least they don't claim to. They do in many ways follow many pagan rituals. In fact, this person I was speaking to yesterday told me that he knows someone in my town here who is interested in something called kosher astrology, and he asked me what I thought of that, and I told him that's like saying kosher pig. At any rate, so at least rabbinical Judaism is ostensibly monotheistic, even though it has pagan and some polytheistic elements that have infiltrated its way into it. But it's ostensibly monotheistic, even though practically it's somewhat slightly has elements of polytheism. And Christianity also claims to be monotheistic, but because of the Trinity, it's not monotheistic. It's polytheistic, right? Even though 3 is 1 and 1 is 3 and all that kind of crap. At any rate, to get back to the main point, we see that we have a religion that's taken hold among the Jews for the past 2,000 plus years, known as rabbinical Judaism. It is by the admission of rabbinical Jews. Again, I'm giving the example of the person I ate over last night. It is an irrational religion, but we follow it anyway, as he says, because my father followed it and because the world is rational. Okay? Well, that is rationalization. That's a rationalization of irrationality. That's what we have here. But what I also wanted to say is that when I go around and I speak to people about what I believe, and I never force my beliefs on them, but I always speak to them. If people are interested, I tell them what I believe. There is a lot of acceptance and interest and even fascination in what I have to say. Now, the community here in the Golan Heights that I live in is a kind of a unique community. Some people have called it an Ir Miklat, which means a city of refuge. It's kind of people who never really kind of fit in other places, somehow or another make their way up here and end up here. So maybe this is not representative of all of Israel, But even when I was down in Jerusalem, when I used to live down in Jerusalem, and when I visit Jerusalem, I also see the same kind of attitude that people are very interested and even fascinated by what I have to say, or what any Tanakh leaning Israelite, what any Tanakh leaning Jew, what any Karaite Jew, if they know their stuff, would have to say. So that is actually very encouraging. I'm very happy about that. And I think that this is a good sign, and has been a good sign for many years, that Karaism, Choser B'Tanach, returning to the Tanakh, Tanach-only Judaism, Tanach-only Torah, is on the rise. In fact, I now tie this up. I'll just say it for another couple of minutes, and then we'll end my my rant at the beginning. I would tie this up now with what's going on with the Iran war with the United States. It seems like, on the one hand, on the political side, even though there's a lull at the moment, that we're certainly heading into something much greater, much deeper, right? World War III, if you want to call it that. Let's hesitate. Well, we'll say maybe even end of days kind of stuff. I hesitate to say that because there have been so many times in the past where people thought it was the end of days, and it wasn't. But certainly a possibility of heading into World War III / end of days kind of stuff, right? On the one hand. On the other hand, we have more and more interest within the nation of Israel, here in Israel, about charism, about Tanakh, about Choser B'Tanakh, about returning to the Tanakh. And I think that as these two trends advance, one, returning more and more to Tanakh within the nation of Israel, rejecting more and more rabbinical Judaism, and the rejection of rabbinical Judaism is not new. It's the continuation of a trend that really has been going on for a couple of hundred years now. But as this trend continues, where it's more and more of a rejection of rabbinical Judaism, more and more of an acceptance of Karaism, Choser B'Tanach, returning to Tanakh, and at the same time, as we get closer and closer to the full blown, or as this World War III / potential end of days scenario develops, then I think we're going to see these two elements coming together, and the whoever's left in the world, in the nation of Israel, is going to realize that the only way forward is to reject this derivative religion, this irrational religion known as rabbinical Judaism, and return to the true Torah, return to the true Tanakh. At the same time, the other element I'll put in as these two things come together is that at that time, if this really is end of days stuff, then Yahweh will make his presence known one way or another through prophets, however he chooses to, or perhaps through another Mount Sinai kind of revelation, or who knows. And that will complete the triangle. So we'll have end of days on the one hand, we'll have return to true Torah on the other hand, and we'll have Yahweh speaking to the nation through prophets or directly on the third hand. That completes the triad. I shouldn't say that since we were speaking about the Trinity of Christianity before. That completes the triangle, and we will have a situation where those three elements come together, and that will usher us into the next era. I hesitate to call it the Messianic era. I hate using the word Messianic. I hate focusing on the Messiah. I had a discussion today at another person's house with a very interesting young woman who also even said many of the same things that I've been saying for years. And one of the things she said is that Christianity focuses on a Messiah and on a man. We should not be focusing on a Messiah and on a man. We should be focusing on the return of Yahweh, on the return of God to the earth, and to reconnect with the children of Israel and all of humanity. So I won't call it the Messianic age. I'll call it the next era. Let's call it the era of Yahweh, or the era of reconnection with Yahweh. So that's the way I see things. Those are my thoughts for today. And we'll take a break for just a couple of minutes. I'll put on some music, and then we will dig in to the topics that we have at hand. So thank you very much for joining us. Once again, this is Hakham Melech Rahmiel Ben Yaakov from the World Alliance of Qara'im. We'll take a break for just a couple of moments, and we will be right back.
Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo salía, vino en el cielo y en la estrellería, ídolo santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham vino. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer de Terra, enana, día en día, ella preguntaba, ¿qué tiene la cara tan demonada? Ella ya sabía el bien que tenía. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Al fin los 9 meses pare quería, iba caminando por campos en viñas, y a su marido no le descubría, topó una mara y parería. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Con
Okay, so we're back. Let me just fix these banners here. This goes up and that goes down. Okay, so we're back. And I did want to speak today about, I wanted to do a little bit of biblical archaeology. I wanted to talk about the Melech inscriptions. But I think, excuse me, I think we're going to save that for next time because it is getting kind of late. And in previous Torah studies, we haven't always had time to get directly into the Torah itself. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to save the Melech inscriptions for next week, hopefully. And we're going to dig right into Zechariah chapter 8. Remember, we've been learning Zechariah. Before that, we learned Malachi. And we'll go directly into Zechariah chapter 8. Okay, so let's do that. Let me just get this set up here. 1 second. And I'll share the screen. Okay, so hopefully you guys all see the screen. And let me just set this up. Just give me 1 more second. Sorry, I forgot to do it before, so just take a second. I want to go to the Robert Alter translation, which we commonly use, and I want to go to Zechariah. So just take a second here. Zechariah chapter 8, Samuel, Kings. We're getting there. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, major prophets, and there we go, chapter 8. Okay, we'll make this a little bit bigger. 5-4. I'll do the same thing over here. And we're in Zechariah chapter 8. Okay, so we've got a translation, we've got a commentary to refer to when and if we want to, but we're going to dig in, of course, as we always do, in the Hebrew. So again, what I like to do is I like to give a bit of context. So last week, we read through, we understood, we studied Zechariah chapter 7. So let's read it through very fast, very quickly in the English, and then we're going to dig into Zechariah chapter 8. So this is chapter 7. Again, I hope you guys can see me here. I'm sure you can. Yes, just checking. And we have, in the 4th year of King Darius, the word of Yahweh came to Zechariah on the 4th day of the 9th month, in the month of Kislev. The people of Bethel had sent Sharezer and Regem Melech together with their men to entreat Yahweh by asking the priests of the house of Yahweh Almighty and the prophets, should I mourn and fast in the 5th month as I've done for so many years? And we discussed about this fast in the 5th month. We discussed about that's a mourning for the destruction of the first temple, which occurred approximately 70 years earlier, when the Babylonians destroyed the first temple in 586 BCE, and Jeremiah at the time predicted that there would be an exile of 70 years. So now it's approximately 70 years later, and all this time the Jews have been mourning in the 5th month to commemorate or to mourn over the destruction of the temple, which is stated, as we saw, in 2 different dates, and it's the dates are given at the end of the book of Jeremiah and at the end of the book of 2 Kings. In Jeremiah, it says on the 10th day of the 5th month, on the end of the 2nd book of Kings, it says on the 7th day of the 5th month. We won't get into that discrepancy now, and the rabbis, of course, follow neither of those and follow it on the 9th day of the 5th month, but that's a whole other story in and of itself. At any rate, so people came to ask Yahweh if they should continue fasting, because at this point now it's the return is happening. Zechariah is prophesying at the time of the return to Judea, and they want to know if they should continue fasting. Then the word of Yahweh Almighty came to me: ask all of the people in the land of the priests, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th months for the past 70 years, was it really for me that you fasted? And when you were eating and drinking, were you not just feasting for yourselves? Are these not the words of Yahweh that Yahweh proclaimed through the earlier prophets when Jerusalem and its surrounding towns were at rest and prosperous, and the Negev and the western foothills were settled? And the word of the Lord of Yahweh came again to Zechariah. This is what Yahweh Almighty says: administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other. But they refused to pay attention. Stubbornly, they turned their backs and covered their ears. They made their hearts as hard as flint and would not listen to the law or to the words of Yahweh Almighty had sent by his spirit through the earlier prophets. So Yahweh Almighty was very angry. When I called, they did not listen. So when they called, I would not listen, says Yahweh Almighty. I scattered them with a whirlwind among all the nations where they were strangers. The land they left behind them was so desolate that no one traveled through it. This is how they made the pleasant land desolate, right? So should we fast? You know what? You were never fasting. It was never a fast from the heart. You were never doing it for me, right? You were fasting for yourselves. And when you ate, you were eating for yourselves. And what I would have preferred is if you would listen to the old prophets before I'd kicked you all out, when the towns were at rest and prosperous, and you had shown mercy and compassion to each other, not oppress the widow, the fatherless, the foreigner, or the poor, and not plot evil against each other, right? You didn't listen to me, so I didn't listen to you when you called out to me. You're gone. So in other words, I don't care so much about your fasting. I care more that you're moral people. And if that doesn't represent the difference between true Torah and rabbinical Judaism, I don't know what is, right? Rabbinical Judaism is so focused on ritual and tradition and all kinds of, things you have to do, prayers you have to say at certain times, and rituals you have to do at certain times. You wake up in the morning and you say a certain prayer, and then you wash your hands with a certain amount of times on each hand, and there's discussion as to how many times on each hand how many times you wash each hands, and so on and so forth. So this is like the fasting, right? It's ritualistic, it's legalistic. And what Yahweh really wants is just for us to be good people, just to be good people. And it's interesting because I had an interesting discussion with someone about a week ago, also here in the community. Again, they're always asking me about Karaism, because whether they, at the end of the day, agree with it now or not, they're very interested in it. And they said, well, we were talking about, I said, you don't have to put on tefillin on phylacteries. You don't have to separate meat and milk. You don't have to, say certain prayers at certain times. You don't have to, say the Shema, the prayer, the phrases from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and other places in the morning and in the evening. So then the person said to me, well, as a Karaite, then what do you have to do? And you know what? I'd never thought about it that way before. And I sat and I thought about it, and I said, not much. Just be a good person. That's all you have to do. Yes, of course, there are other things. We're not supposed to eat certain types of food. And of course, we have to follow the Chagim. We have to celebrate the Chagim on their right day. But other than that, there's really not that much that we have to specifically do. A lot of the laws of the Torah are laws of the land, right? What happens if you, if you steal, or if you, if you hurt somebody else or accidentally killed someone, but that's laws for the land, right? What do we have to do as individual Jews, as individual Israelites? Not that much, besides just being good people. Do not murder, do not steal, do not bear false witness, and so on and so forth. And at that moment, I always realized it, but it was just it came to me like a ton of bricks, that so much of what is Judaism, so much of what we consider Judaism today, so much of what is rabbinical Judaism is just all of these is just ritualistic and legalistic, ritualistic and legalistic, junk stuff that the rabbis have instituted. You don't realize to what degree that's the case, but it's to a huge degree. And when you take away all of these rabbinical additions, when you take away all of these rabbinical distortions, all of these rabbinical traditions, all of these rabbinical ritualistic activities, then honestly, there's not that much left to do except be a good person, which is the whole idea of the Torah in the first place. And if you think about it, in ancient Israel, they weren't walking around putting on tefillin and praying 3 times a day and saying specific blessings before they ate a fruit and another blessing before they ate a vegetable, and saying a 10-minute blessing after they ate a meal, and selling their comments on Passover and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. They were too busy actually working. They were too busy out in the fields. They were too busy shepherding their flocks. They were too busy planting their fields and harvesting their grain. They didn't have time to do any of that stuff. And it's really just it's a product of the exile. It's a product of the galut, the exile. When you have so much time, when you're away from your land and you're in foreign nations, and yes, you have to work hard to support yourself, but and not even, and there are many Orthodox Jews who don't even do that. But you have so much. It's not your country. It's not your land. So you have all of this extra time. You're not worrying about your own country, and you sit around and you make all of these ridiculous things. That's kind of part of the situation. I mean, even a lot of these laws, the rabbinical laws, originated in the land of Israel, but it was in the time when we were not in control of our own land. The Greeks were, and then the Romans, aside from the Hasmonean period. Any rate, I digress. So, yeah, just be a good person. How about that? All right, let's get back to Zechariah. We're going to now dig into chapter 8 of Zechariah. We're going to switch over to the Hebrew. And we will take a look at what Zechariah has to say in chapter 8. And this is about the restoration of Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem. And it says in verse 1, Wahid Dvar Yahweh Sevaot Lemor. So the word of Yahweh of hosts, we'll just translate it in the colloquially or the usual translation of Yahweh of hosts. So the word of Yahweh of hosts was to say, or said, verse 2, Ko Amar Yahweh Tzevaot, Kineti Letzion, this is a famous verse, Kineti Letzion Kin'a Gidola, Wachema Gidola, Kineti La. I Kineti Letzion Kin'a Gidola. I was jealous for Zion with a great jealousy. Wachema Gidola, Kineti La, and with great fury, with great heated fury, fervor, they translated here. That's actually a better translation. With great fervor was I zealous, or was I jealous for her? In other words, we saw this early in Zechariah, right? This idea of Yahweh wanting to come back to Jerusalem. Remember, Zechariah is speaking in the time of the returnees from Jerusalem. He's speaking in the time after. I don't want to go into the whole history right now because it'll take too long. But after the Israelites were exiled to Babylon in 586 BCE, approximately 50, 60, nobody knows exactly the date. There was a trickle back to Israel, which culminated in the building of the Second Temple. And this is the population that Zechariah is speaking. Zechariah is speaking to the population that is already back in Judea, in Judah, in Yehud, the province of Yehud under the Persians. That's what it was called at the time. And speaking to those returnees, and he's now trying to forgive Jerusalem for its sins 70 years earlier. and restore Jerusalem that had been destroyed by the Babylonians 70, I'm saying 70 in round numbers, 70 years earlier, right? This is all about restoration. We saw this in a number of the chapters in Zechariah, okay? Ko amar Yahweh, shavti et Zion, v'shachanti b'toch Yerushalayim. So says Yahweh, I have returned to Zion, v'shachanti b'toch Yerushalayim, and I have dwelled, or I am dwelling within Jerusalem. And we see again, this is parallelism. This is very common. This is synonymous parallelism. So the verse is actually broken down into two sub-verses. Okay, Shafti el Zion, I returned, or maybe it expresses more the idea of I want to return, or I am returning. I am returning to Zion, and I am dwelling within Jerusalem. So Zion, this word here, is in parallel to Yerushalayim, that's Jerusalem right here. And Shafti, returned, is the same, is in parallel with dwelling. So returned, dwelling, Zion, Jerusalem, right? It's parallel, okay? It's a very common way that the biblical Hebrew expresses itself. When Yikra'ah Yerushalayim ir ha'emet, and Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth. V'har Yahweh tziva'ot har hakodesh, and the mountain of Yahweh of hosts, the holy mountain. Okay, let's get a little commentary and translation there. So Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth. Zechariah here follows the practice of third Isaiah, who attributes, just Isaiah, don't worry about the third Isaiah for now, that means the later chapters in Isaiah, who attributes new names to Jerusalem in keeping with its dramatically formed nature in the restoration of Zion. Okay, so we'll go back to here. So in verse 4, so Ko Amar Yahweh Tzivaot Od Yeshvu Zekainim. This is also, these are all very famous verses. Od Yeshvu Zekainim Uzkainot Berechovot Yerushalayim V'ish Mish'anto Biado Merov Yamim. So says Yahweh of hosts. Once again, old people, old men and old women will sit down along the streets. In other words, sit down not on the streets, but on benches, shall we say, sit along the streets of Jerusalem. And men with their walking sticks in their hands, who have their walking sticks in their hands because they are so old, because they're so advanced in age, literally from an abundance of days. Okay, and verse 5, also another beautiful verse. And the cities of the and the streets of the city will be filled with boys and girls playing in its streets. Right? Isn't that a beautiful imagery? Right? That's the imagery of the resettlement, of the reestablishment of Jerusalem, of Yerushalayim as a settled city, right? Which had been destroyed, essentially completely destroyed by the Babylonians 70 years later, right? So these may also have dual meanings. These prophecies often are said to have dual meanings, right? One for the restoration at that time, 70 years later after the exile to Babylon, and also as perhaps representing, maybe if not directly, but also maybe they may actually be speaking about dual times, but representing end of days prophecies, right? That old people, old men and women will be walking through the streets and sitting on the benches, and boys and girls will be playing in the streets of Jerusalem. It's going to be resettled, right? And we see this today. Jerusalem 100 years ago had a population of, if I'm not mistaken, 50,000, if not less. Again, don't quote me on that. I'm not going to go look it up right now, but I believe that's correct. And now it has a population of, I don't know what the official population is, but the metropolitan area of Jerusalem is about 1 million people, if not close to it. Let's get a number on that, okay? What is the population of the metro area of Jerusalem? 1. Wow, I didn't even realize it was that high. 1.25 to 1.35 million residents. Greater Jerusalem, Yerushalayim Rabatit. Unbelievable. I didn't even know it had gotten that much. So we're talking about a city that 100 years ago was inhabited by 50,000 people. And today is inhabited by 1.25 million people. Okay, so let me just check in, see if there are any questions, any comments. Any questions or any comments, anybody? Point in the heart. נסו לתת שיעור אך ורק בעברית. אני עושה לפעמים שיעורים בעברית, אבל השיעור הזה זה באנגלית, אוקיי? אני מצטער. תנסה כמה שיותר להבין את האנגלית שלנו. Okay, so, alrighty. So, verse 6. And let's see if we have any commentary. Let's go to our buddy Robert Alter and see if he has any commentary. Each with a staff in his hand because of their many years. In the new era of peace and prosperity, the city will be filled with people who will have lived to a ripe old age. The complement to this multiplication of elders is the children playing in the squares. Does it seem beyond the remnant of this people in these days? Okay, we haven't gotten to that verse yet. We're going to get to the verse. Okay, so we're in verse 6. Ko amar Yahweh Tzibaot, ki yipaleh be'enei she'erit ha'am hazeh b'yamim hahem, gam be'enei yipaleh gam be'enai yipaleh ne'um Yahweh Tzibaot. So says Yahweh of hosts, if this thing seems too wondrous, seems impossible in the eyes of the remnant of these people in those days, in those days, also in my eyes, it seems wondrous, it seems unbelievable, says Yahweh Tzibaot. All right, let's get a little bit of understanding of that. Let's get a translation first of all. Go to verse 6 here. Thus says the Lord of armies, does it seem beyond the remnant of this people in these days? So it would be beyond me, said the Lord of armies. Okay. Does it seem beyond the remnant of the people in these days? This rhetorical question is addressed to those who might doubt the capacity of the people to complete the project of rebuilding the temple. It is surely not beyond God to conceive such a consummation, and it should not be beyond the people. One might note that many scholars view the recurrent phrase, the remnant of the people, as a designation for those who remained in Judah after its conquest by the Babylonians. So what Robert Alter is saying here is that this is meant to be rhetorical. This is not meant to be an actual question. Let's read it again. This is verse 6. Ko amar Yahweh Tzibaot ki yipaleh be'enei she'erit ha'am hazeh b'yamim hahem gam be'enei yipaleh ne'um Yahweh Tzibaot. So if you people, okay, so I see what Robert Alter's interpretation is. I think actually that is correct. So if you people think that this is too great, or if you, the remnants of the people, think that this thing is too great, then I also would think that this is too great. In other words, since I don't think it's too great, you also should not think that this is too great a thing. Okay, you should believe that this is going to happen. All right, and that's verse 6. All right, let's go on to verse 7. Let me just check in to see if there are any questions or any comments. I don't see any right now. Okay, so verse 7. Ko amar Yahweh Tzibaot hineni moshi'a et ami me'eretz mizrach u'me'eretz mavo hashemesh. So verse 7 says, so says Yahweh of hosts, hineni moshi'a et ami, behold, I am redeeming, or I'm saving, I am redeeming, let's see how to translate here, save, redeem, I like redeem better. I am redeeming my people, me'eretz mizrach, u'me'eretz mavo hashemesh, from the lands of the east, the lands where the and the lands of the west, literally where the lands where the sun comes down, or comes into. Okay, there's this. I won't go into detail right now, but literally means the lands of the coming of the sun. So what is the coming of the sun? There's a point of view, or should I say a phrase that's used a lot to describe the sunrise and the sunset. The sunrise is described as the going out of the sun, and the sunset is described as the coming in of the sun. And that's because the way we see it from Earth, right? And the way the Israelites see it. So a lot of people will criticize this for saying, oh, the Israelites didn't know that the ancient Israelites didn't know that the Earth turned on its axis and thought that the sun was the one that was moving around the Earth. No, that's not necessarily true. The Torah, even already going back to Genesis 1, is describing things from the point of view of the way we see it here on Earth, right? So we're standing on the Earth. It looks like the sun is coming up and the sun is going down. In fact, we call it sunrise and sunset, right? We don't call it Earth turn and Earth turn more or something like that. We call the sunrise because from our point of view, we see the sun rising, and when the sun sets, from our point of view, we see the sun setting. From our point of view, it looks like the sun is moving. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So it's not a scientific statement, but it's the same thing here. So from me eretz mizrach me eretz mavo shemesh. So literally, what this means, I shouldn't even translate this as from the lands of the east. This really means the lands of the rising of the sun and the lands of the setting of the sun. The sun, where the sun comes into. מה? אני יכול לנסות, אני באמצע שיעור, אני אעשה שיעור אחר. אני אנסה כמה שיעור, אוקיי? אוקיי, והבאתי אותם, verse 8. Where were we? Okay, so verse 7 here. And let's get a little bit of commentary here from Robert Alter. So I'm about to rescue my people from the land of the east. The plausible inference from these words is that a substantial population of exiles from Judah remained in Babylon after Cyrus's decree permitting return, and this seems historically very likely. The land of the sunset is added to convey the sense everywhere. Okay. Influence of blah, 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 blah. Okay, we're not even going to get into that. Let's go into the next verse here. So we're now in verse 8. Verse 8. Viveti otam v'shachanu b'tok Yerushalayim, and I will bring them back, and they will dwell within Jerusalem. V'hayu li la'am, and they will be for me a people. V'ani e'el lahem le'elohim be'emet u'b'tzedakah. Okay, they will be for me a people, and I will be for them as a God in truth and in justice. Right. So it's talking about the return of the people of Israel to Yahweh, and talking about the return of Yahweh to the people of Israel. All right. So it's all about this restoration of Yerushalayim, the ingathering of the exiles from the land of the east, where it says Me'eretz Mizrach Haaretz, right, from the land of the rising of the sun, or the lands of the east. That's speaking about Babylon, which at this point was now Persia. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. And there's a restoration, there's a reconciliation between Yahweh and his people Israel. Okay, all right. So we are now in verse 9. And verse 9 says, Ko amar Yahweh tziva'ot, techazakna yedechem, ashom'im b'yamim ha'ele, et ha'devarim ha'ele. So says Yahweh tziva'ot, techazakna yedechem, ashom'im b'yamim ha'ele, et ha'devarim ha'ele. So your hands that are hearing in those days these words, let them be strong. Okay, mipi ha'nevi'im, over here, mipi ha'nevi'im asher biyom yusad beit Yahweh tziva'ot ha'echal lehibanot. From the mouths of the prophets asher biyom yusad beit Yahweh tziva'ot ha'echal lehibanot, and from the mouths of the prophets who on that day it was established that the house of Yahweh of hosts will be built. All right, let's get a little bit of translation interpretation on that. So that's verse 9. Okay, and let's even get 8 to see what Robert Alter's translation is. Just to get throw another eye on it. So the Lord, thus says the Lord of armies, may your hands be strong. You who hear in these days these words from the prophets who are in the time the foundation of the house of the Lord of the armies was laid for the time. Oh, that's 8. That's exactly the one we want. Let's read this one again. And we are in 9. Okay, wait a second. Oh, I think it's numbering a little bit different. Okay. Thus says the Lord of armies. Second here. This label is 9 here, but it's 8 here. Thus says the Lord of armies, may your hands be strong, you who hear in these days these words from the prophets For in the time the foundation of the house of the Lord of armies was laid for the temple to be rebuilt. And we'll get a little bit of commentary on that. Okay. May your hands be strong. These words, which will be repeated in verse 12, are an exhortation to those engaged in the arduous effort of rebuilding the temple. As a reference to rebuilding in the second part of the verse makes clear, the words from the prophets, the prophet reference probably to Haggai and to Zechariah himself. Okay, so this is speaking about the rebuilding of the temple. Okay. All right. Let me just parse this one more time in my head, even in the English. Right. Okay. Got it. Okay. So let me just check in and see if there are any Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Okay. All right. So up to verse 10. Verse 10. Ki lifnei hayamim hahem sachar ha'adam lo ni'ia sachar behema einenu וליוצא ולבא אין שלום מן הצר ואשלח את כל האדם איש ברעהו. Because before these days, I'll translate, because before these days, or those days, שכר אדם לא נהיה, there was, men were not able to make a salary. They weren't able to support themselves. Okay? ושכר הבהמה איננה. And the wages for the animal were nothing. In other words, the land had, and this is talking about the days of the exile, the land had become poor. Okay, and to anyone who was going back and forth, or anyone who was coming in and out of the land, there was no peace. Minatzar, from the oppressor, from the criminal, the oppressor. And I caused each person to go against his fellow man. Okay, again, let's get a little bit of translation and commentary there. I'll bring this off. For before these days, the wages of man was naught, and the wages of beast was nothing. And for him coming and going, there was no peace from the foe, and I set each man against his fellow. So this is talking about before the restoration of Yerushalayim. Let's get a little commentary. The wages of the man was naught, and the wages of the beast was nothing. Man reaped no profit for his labor, and there was no food for his beasts of burden. And for him coming and going, there was no peace from the foe. Okay. Although other identifications have been proposed, the language sounds like a reference to siege. The same Hebrew phrase, literally going out and coming in, is used to describe the besieged Jericho in Joshua. Okay. So in other words, what Robert Alter is saying is that there was a siege. I guess speaking about the siege by the Babylonians. If these lines, in fact, refer to Jerusalem besieged by the Babylonians, what this formulation reflects is the bitter divisions within the people during the moment of crisis. Jeremiah, one recalls, was the object of murderous conspiracy. Right? If we go back to the book of Jeremiah, we see that he, at a certain point, there was attempted murder on him. Okay, let's go back to the Hebrew. Okay, verse 11. ואתה לא כי ימים הראשונים אני לשארית העם הזה נאום יהוה צבאות. And now it will not be like these early days. כי ימים הראשונים אני לשארית העם הזה. It will not be like those early days, אני לשארית העם הזה, that I will be to the remnant of these people, declares Yahweh Tzebaot. In other words, all of these things that were happening in the past, okay? In other words, there was no money for the people, there was not enough food for the animals, the city was under siege, there was no peace, and people were against each other. Now, it will not be like those first days that I will be for this nation, declares Yahweh Tzebaot. In other words, in this time, it's going to be different. Again, we're talking about the restoration of Yerushalayim. We're talking about the restoration of the city. We're talking about the return of Yahweh to Yerushalayim, and we're talking about basically Yahweh and the people of Israel making up, right? Restoration. Okay, so that's what the prophecy is about from the beginning of the book. Okay, let's see if there's any commentary on that. Okay, let's go on. Verse 12. Ki zera shalom hagefen titen pirya v'haaretz titen et yivula v'hashamayim yitnu talam. Okay, let's translate up until there. Ki zera hashalom hagefen, because the seed of peace, the grapevine, will give its fruit. V'haaretz titen et yivula, and the land will give its produce. V'hashamayim yitnu talam, and the heavens will give their due. V'inchalti et sherit am hazeh et kol ela, and I will bestow upon the remnant of this nation all of these things. Okay. Again, let's get a little bit of translation. Okay. For the peaceful sowing, the vine shall give its fruit, and the land shall give its yield, and the heavens shall give their due, and I will bestow on the remnant of this people all of these. All right, is there any commentary here? No. Okay, but I think we get the picture. Okay, verse 13. והיה כאשר הייתם כללה בגויים, בית יהודה ובית ישראל, כן אושיע אתכם והייתם ברכה. אל תיראו תחזקנה ידכם. Okay, so just as just as you were a curse among the nations, right? The nations cursed you, or you appeared in the eyes of the nations to have been cursed by me, by Yahweh. Beit Yehuda, house of Judah, Ubeit Israel, and the house of Israel. Beit Yehuda is speaking about the house of Judah, speaking about the southern kingdom, and the house of Israel speaking about the northern kingdom. So I will redeem you, so I will save you. Okay, and you shall be a blessing. Okay, in other words, the other nations will look at you and they will see that you are blessed. Do not fear. Let your hands be strong. And this plays back again into the same phrase that we saw before, right? Let your hands be strong. And we saw earlier in, where is that verse again? Right here, okay? That when you hear the words of these prophets, that your hands should be strong. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to let my cat in for 1 second. I'll be right back. Come, Shosho. Come, baby. Come. Come, sweetie. Come over here. I'll give you food afterwards. Okay. All right. Any questions, any comments so far? We know God by living His Torah. Shabbat Shalom, Vanya. Okay. Okay, sweet. My cat wants to say hi. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Okay. I want to say hi to everybody. This is Hakham Shoham. Say hello, Hakham Shoham. We also have Hakham Lavi, and that's Hakham Shoham. Okay. So where were we? Okay, we're in verse 14. Verse 14, Kiko Amar Yahweh Tzebaot, because so says Yahweh of hosts, Asher Zamamti Lehareah Lachem, Ta'tzif Avotechem Oti, Amar Yahweh Tzebaot Velo Nichamti, so says Yahweh of hosts, just as I was determined, or I'd planned to do bad things to you, to punish you essentially, to do evil to you, to do unpleasant things to you, Ta'tzif Avotechem Oti, because your forefathers, your fathers infuriated me. Again, talking about the generation, the previous generation, or the generation of the exile, the generation of when Jerusalem was conquered by the Babylonians. Amar Yahweh Tzebaot, says Yahweh of hosts, Velo nichamti, and I did not relent. Right? There was a long process by which Yahweh tried to send the prophets out and tried to return Israel to the Torah, and Israel did not relent. They went in their evil ways, they went in their evil steps, and eventually Yahweh made a decision. That's it. I'm not relenting anymore. I'm going to destroy Yerushalayim. I'm going to exile the people of Israel to Babylon, and I'm not relenting. Enough is enough. The time for apologies is over. The time for forgiveness is over. I'm not relenting. Okay, verse 15. Ken shavti zamamti biyamim ele lativ et Yerushalayim ve'et Beit Yehuda al tira'u. So I've returned, and I'm now making plans, or I've now planned in these days to do good to Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. So do not fear, right? So we see parallelism here again, okay? In the past, he had made plans to do bad things because of the anger that generation, the way that generation angered him, and he is not relenting, okay? Now he is planning, now he's made a decision, he's planned to do good things to Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. So do not fear, right? It's words of comfort, words of comfort. Okay. Verse 16, these are the things that you should do. Dabru emet ish et re'ehu emet. Umishpat shalom shiftu b'sha'arechem. So these are the things that you shall do. In other words, if you now want to keep me on your good side, if you now want to do your part to fulfill this restoration, then this is what you should do. Okay? Dabru emet, ish et rehu emet, speaks truth. Each person should speak truth to his fellow man. Umishpat shalom shiftu b'sha'arechem, and judge and make judgments of peace, or judge for peace. In other words, make true judgments. You shall, or mishpat shalom, judgments of peace. You shall judge in your gates. And your gates means in your cities, right? In your various cities. Okay. Why is the city called the gate, or why is a gate a reference to the city? Because any city of significance in ancient Israel and in the ancient Near East, and really in many places in the world, if it was a city of any significance, then it would have a wall around it, and it would be a walled city. And if it had a walled city, you needed to get in and out of that walled city, and so you used a gate. Okay, so Shiftu b'sha'arechem is a reference to these walled cities, and specifically, what does it say? Judge in your gates. If you've ever studied a bit about the way these walled cities work, especially in Israel and in the surrounding area, then when you enter into the gate, that's essentially the main square. That's the central square of the city. It's like the town square. Okay, so judgment took place there. The elders would sit there. Merchants would trade there. So essentially, when it says in your gates, it means in your town square, in your city hall, let's say, or something like that, or in your downtowns. That was like the downtown of the walled city in ancient times. Okay. All right. Let's see if there's any commentary on that. Okay, so verse 12. Nope, only back into verse 12. Okay. Verse 17. So we did verse 16, we did verse 17. Are there any questions, or are there any comments so far? Anybody? Are you guys enjoying the study so far? I hope so. And after this, we're going to go into Leviticus chapter 25. Okay, so if you have any questions or any comments, please let me know. Okay, verse 17. Well, ish et ra'at re'ehu al tachshavu bilevavchem ushvuat sheker al te'ehavu ki et kol ela asher saneti ne'um Yahweh. Well, ish et ra'at re'ehu al tachshavu. Do not think evil towards your fellow man in your hearts. Bilevavchem ushvuat sheker al te'ehavu. And do not make false oaths. In other words, when you make an oath, the idea of an oath in the Torah and the Tanakh is you make an oath in the name of God. I'm not going to say that name of God right now because it would sound like I'm making an oath in his name. But if you make an oath in God's name, you would say, as God, using the actual name, lives, I promise I will give you $100 next week or something like that, right? So if you make that oath in the name of God, then it should not be a false oath, right? It should not be an oath that you then do not fulfill. Okay, so do not love, do not desire false oaths. Ki et kol ela asher saneti ne'um Yahweh, because all of these are all things which I hate, and I have hated, declares Yahweh. All right, verse 18. Wahi devar Yahweh tzevaot elai lemor, and the word of Yahweh of hosts was upon me to say, Ko amar Yahweh tzevaot, tzom harivi'i, v'tzom hamishi, v'tzom hashvi'i, v'tzom asiri, ye'eh lebeit Yehuda lesason v'simcha, u'lemoadim tov'im, wa'emet, wa'hashalom havu. Okay, so says, and this is going to harken back to the previous chapter that we learned last week, but let's translate it. Let's get first of all, let's see if there's a commentary on any of these verses. I think, the verse numbers are off by about one. Okay. So says Yahweh of hosts, Tzom Revi'i, the fast of the fourth month, but Tzom Hamishi, the fast of the fifth month, Tzom Shvi'i, the fast of the seventh month, and Tzom Asiri, the fast of the 10th month. So these are all different fasts. We spoke about the fast of the fifth month. That's the fast of the destruction. It was the fast commemorating the destruction of the first temple. We spoke about in the previous chapter of Zechariah, in chapter 7, right? Remember at the beginning of the study of Zechariah, we went over that. Okay, so all of these fasts, and we won't get into the reasons for each of these different fasts, but they're all essentially commemorating incidents that occurred 70 years previous with the destruction of Yerushalayim. Okay, so they will turn for the house, or they will be for the house of Judah as happiness or rejoicing and happiness and good days, modim tovim, good holidays to remember good. But emet wa shalom ehavu, and so love, truth, and peace. Okay, so what Yahweh is saying here, what the prophecy is saying here through Zechariah, is that these days, which were essentially days of mourning the destruction, the various levels or the various events that happened in the destruction of Jerusalem 70 years earlier, these days, which were fast days, the people were fasting to commemorate these horrible incidents that happened 70 years earlier, are now going to be turned into days of rejoicing. They're now going to be holidays. They're now going to be days of rejoicing. So again, the same message is coming through of the restoration of Yerushalayim, the restoration of Yahweh, the return of Yahweh to the people of Israel, and the return of the people of Israel, hopefully, right? He's admonishing them, or kind of saying, pleading with them to please do the right thing so that this restoration, this reconciliation takes hold. Okay? Verse 20. Ko amar Yahweh tzeva'ot, od asher yavo amim ve'yoshvei arim rabot. So says Yahweh of hosts. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's get the commentary from Robert Alter on these verses. So the fast of the fourth month, etc. So this reversal of a whole series of fasts addresses the question of the people in Jerusalem as to whether they should continue to keep two particular fasts. Okay, good festivals. This rather odd use of good with festivals may be influenced by the late biblical Yamim Tovim, good days for festivals, which occurs in Esther and becomes standard in rabbinic Hebrew. Okay, we don't have to worry about that one. Love and truth and peace. Avram Ibn Ezra aptly observes that what God really wants of his people is not the awkward practice of fasts, but the love of truth and peace, a life of ethical behavior, right? And once again, this is harkening back to what we saw in Zechariah chapter 7, right? In Zechariah chapter 7, Shosho, you can't do that, sweetie, okay? In Zechariah chapter 7, right, we saw, okay, I'm just going to remind again. Okay, so some people from Bethel came and they asked, and they came to ask of Yahweh by asking the priests of the house of Yahweh and the prophets, should I mourn and fast in the fifth month as I've done for so many years, right? Remember, we saw that in the previous chapter. Shosho, you can't run around, sweetie boy, okay? And then, of course, we saw that Yahweh said, okay, when you're fasting, were you doing it for me? And when you eat, were you doing it for me? Right? So in other words, just do good, administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another, do not oppress the widow or the foreigner, the fatherless, the foreigner, or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other. Shosho, 1 second. My cat is driving me crazy. Okay, baby. Come. Want to sit on me? Okay, we'll try that. Come, baby. Okay. So we see that again, there's this focus on the fasts, right? The fasts are days of mourning, but they're ritualistic. They are ritualistic. They are what's the word I'm looking for? They're legalistic. They're superficial, right? You're fasting to commemorate, right? But if you're not doing good, if you're not administering justice, showing mercy and compassion to one another, if you're still oppressing the widow and the fatherless, the foreigner, and the poor, and you're plotting evil against each other, then what good are these fasts? What good are these ritualistic or these legalistic actions, right? They're just superficial. So that's the message that we're getting again and again, right? None of your legalistic, none of your ritualistic actions are worth much if you haven't gotten to the point where you're doing good, where you're being good people. And again, this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the study, where we were talking about the difference between the Rabbinites and the Torah and the Karaites, right? With the Chozlim b'Tanach, those who are truly trying to come back to Tanakh, right? There's such a focus on rabbinical Judaism. Remember, my friend said that rabbinical Judaism is irrational. He admitted it's irrational, and that's okay. It's irrational because the world is irrational. Okay, so it's irrational. And we also spoke about how it's so ritualistic that again, when somebody about last week or 2 weeks ago asked me if I'm not following rabbinical Judaism, I just follow Torah, what do I have to do? Remember? And I said, I thought about it for a second. I said, not much, really. Just be a good person, right? Because all of these ritualistic actions, all of these things are they're superficial, right? They don't have to do with the Torah. The Torah really just wants us to be good people. And once you're a good person, and once you're just shepherding your flocks and raising your crops and cutting your crops, there really isn't that much else to do if you're following the Torah. And all of the stuff that's done in rabbinical Judaism today is not part of the Torah. It's just added on, and it's insanity. And many people who are Orthodox Jews secretly can't stand it. They don't enjoy it. And that's why so many have left the religion over the years, over the decades, over the centuries, the recent centuries. Okay. Alrighty. Let me just check in to see if there are any questions or any comments. Shabbat Shalom, Christian. Shabbat Shalom. Okay. Okay. Verse 20. Omar Yahweh Tzevaot, Od Asher Yavo Amim, Vayishve Arim Rabot. So says Yahweh Tzevaot, Od Asher Yavo Amim. Entire peoples will, or still yet to come, entire peoples will, or still entire people will come, or in the future entire people will come, Yeshve Arim Rabot, and will settle many cities. So again, this is a prophecy of restoration, right? Not only is Jerusalem going to be resettled, but all of the cities are going to be resettled, right? Or many other cities are going to be resettled. Let's see again. Get a commentary. We can get a little bit of commentary here, okay? And many peoples and vast nations will come to seek the Lord. No, that's not the one. Where is it? Here, okay? Thus says the Lord of armies, peoples and the dwellers of many towns shall come, and the dwellers of one town shall go to another, saying, that's the next verse. Okay. Oh, where are we? Hold on a second. Yeah, right. Okay. So the numbering system is a little bit off here. Peoples and dwellers of many towns shall come, and the dwellers of one town. That's the next verse. Okay. Od asher yavo amim v'yoshvei arim rabot. Okay. Verse 21. Halachu yoshvei achat elachat lemor nelcha haloch. Okay, I'm sorry. So this is saying something a little bit different. Okay, so this is saying, okay, let's get this verse and then we'll go back to what this is saying. So the inhabitants of one city shall go to another city, lemor, and say, Nilcha, haloch, let us go. Lachalot et Pnei Yahweh, to entreat, to query, or to entreat is the correct word, to entreat the face of Yahweh. Okay, not literally, but entreat before Yahweh, ulevakesh Yahweh tzavot, and to seek out Yahweh of hosts. Elcha gamani, also I want to go. So this is speaking about, let me just get this again in context in the Hebrew, verse 20 and 21 together. Okay, so this is not speaking about, I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. This is not speaking about the restoration of people coming back into the cities beside Jerusalem. This is speaking about people who are coming from foreign cities, from cities far away, and they want to go up to Jerusalem, and they want to entreat, they want to pray and entreat Yahweh. Okay, so I'll read this again, verse 20 and 21 in its context. So says Yahweh of hosts, Od asher yavo amim rabim. Hey, show, you can't do that. Show. I'm going to throw you right out of here. Go. Go, sleep. Go. Okay. Kol Yahweh Tzebaot. So says Yahweh of Tzebaot, of hosts. Od asher yavo amim yoshvei arim rabot. So at this time, or in the future, many peoples and the inhabitants of many cities will come, and people from one city will go to the people of another city, and I'm paraphrasing here everything. So I'll just paraphrase it here. The people of these other cities, these foreign cities, are going to go to people of the other city and say, hey, let's go up. We want to go up. Or come with us. We're going to go up to Jerusalem, and we are going to entreat Yahweh. We're going to pray to Yahweh. And we see this happening now. If you go to Jerusalem on any given day, any single day, well, maybe not so much now because tourism is down because the war is going on. But if you go to Jerusalem on any day, you're going to see people from all over the world. If you go to the Kotel, right, which is the western retaining wall of the Temple Mount, if you go to the Kotel, the western wall, then you're going to see people from all over the world there. You're going to see it on if it's a time of the year when there are a lot of tourists, and even when it's not, you're going to see the place packed, and it's going to be packed with people from all over the world who are coming to Jerusalem to entreat the face of Yahweh. Lachalot et Pnei Yahweh. Okay? All right. Verse 22. ובאו עמים רבים וגויים עצומים לבקש את יהוה צבאות בירושלים ולחלות את פני יהוה. And many peoples and many nations will come. Many peoples will come, and many and great nations or giant nations לבקש את יהוה צבאות, to seek out Yahweh of hosts בירושלים, in Jerusalem, ולחלות את פני יהוה, and to entreat the face of Yahweh. And again, we see that today. Okay, one of Israel's, the modern state of Israel, one of its main economies is the tourism economy. People are coming from all over the world. Now, of course, again, since it's wartime, well, the war is officially in a ceasefire at this point. There is a ceasefire in place with Iran. We'll see what happens with that. There's a ceasefire in place with Lebanon. We'll see what happens with that. But officially, there's a ceasefire. But still, tourism is very low right now, obviously because of the recent war, the ongoing war with Iran. But when there's not war threatening, then again, tourism is one of the major economies here in Israel. People come from all over the world to visit Israel, and especially if you're in Jerusalem or in the old city of Jerusalem, on a summer's day when Israel's not in the middle of the war, you will see people from all over the world. Okay. All right. Let's see if there's any commentary that we can get here. So people and dwellers in many towns shall yet come. This vision of the nations coming to seek out the God of Israel is in keeping with a recurrent theme in 3rd Isaiah and may well be influenced by him. Okay. And that's the only commentary there. Okay, verse 23. Verse 23, let's break this up. This is a long verse, so we're going to break this up into pieces. Break it up here. Ko amar Yahweh Tzvaot, so says Yahweh of hosts, Biyamim hema, in those days, asher yachziku asara anashim mikol shanot hagoyim. In those days, 10 people from all of the different tongues of the nations, in other words, from all the peoples around the world, right? The Spanish-speaking people, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Chinese, on and on, right? All the peoples of the world, right? It literally says Mikol Lishonot HaGoyim, from all the tongues of the nations. Okay, so 10 people from all of the different nations will grab onto. What will they grab onto? V'chziku b'knaf ish Yehudi. They will grab onto the hem of a Jew, ish Yehudi, of a man of Yehuda, a person of a Judahite person, right? That's where the word Jew comes from. It comes from this southern kingdom, Judea, okay, Yehuda, or again, by the Persians, it's called the province of Yehud, which comes ultimately from the tribe of Yehuda. The tribe of Yehuda was the tribe that settled there. That's the tribe that David came from, and that's why he established when he reigned over Jerusalem, or when he reigned as king. That's why he established the capital of the United Kingdom of Israel in the territory of Judah, his tribe in Jerusalem. That's in the tribe of in the allotted land of the tribe of Judah, of Yehuda. Okay, so 10 people will come from all of the nations, from each nation, and will grab onto the hem of a Jew, of a person who is from the tribe of Yehuda, or from the province of Yehuda. Lemor necha imachem kisham anu Elohim imachem. Let us go with you. We want to come with you. We want to go with you because we've heard that God is with you. Right? So this is all very, very beautiful prophecies. These are all very beautiful prophecies. Okay? I think what we'll do, first of all, let me see if there are any questions. Any questions or any comments? Thank you. QOR2, Court 2. Okay. Any questions or any comments? Let's get, I think there's a Robert Alter commentary on that. Okay, so 10 people from all the tongues of the nation shall grasp the border of a Jew's garment. Oops, highlight that in. This vivid image conveys the sense of throngs of foreigners desperate to join the people with whom God dwells. The term Yehudi, Jew, never appears in earlier biblical literature, although it occurs frequently in Esther, which also belongs to the Persian period. Yehudi is palpably moving toward the meaning of Jew, because it is now hard to speak of Judahite, Hebrew ben Yehuda, given that the kingdom of Judah no longer exists, having been replaced by the Persian province of Yehud. Right, so it's basically what we're talking about. Okay, I think we'll sum up. This was a kind of a long chapter and a very interesting chapter, so I want to sum up just by reading the chapter over in English, because it's very important when you're teaching to review, right, and to repeat. Repetition is one of the most basic ways that a teacher, or that a good teacher, will get information across. Okay, so let's read this again. Zechariah chapter 8. We're just going to read it in the English. So the word of the Lord Almighty came to me. No, let's read the Robert Alter translation. That's going to be much better. Okay. Okay. And the word of the Lord of armies came, saying, Thus says the Lord of armies, I've been very jealous for Zion, and with great wrath I've been jealous for her. Thus says the Lord, I've come back to Zion, and abided within Yerushalayim, within Jerusalem. And Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord, the holy mountain. Verse 4. Thus says the Lord of armies, again shall old men and old women sit in the squares of Jerusalem, each with a staff in hand, because of their many years. Verse 5. And the squares of the city shall be filled with boys and girls playing in her squares. Thus says the Lord of armies, does it seem beyond the remnant of this people in these days? So it would be beyond me, said the Lord of armies. Thus says the Lord of armies, I am about to rescue my people from the land of the east and from the land of the sunset, and I will bring them, and they shall abide in Jerusalem and be my people, and I will be their God in truth and in righteousness. Thus says the Lord of armies, may your hands be strong, you who hear in these days these words from the prophets who are in the time of the foundation of the house. In the time of the foundation of the house of the Lord of the armies was laid, or in the time the foundation of the house of the Lord of armies was laid for the temple to be rebuilt. In other words, this returning generation when the second temple is in the process of being built. For before these days, the wages of men was naught, and the wages of beasts was nothing. And for him coming and going, there was no peace from the foe. And I set each man against his fellow. Verse 10. Now, not as in the former days, am I to the remnant of this people, says the Lord, said the Lord of armies. For the peaceful sowing, the vine shall give its fruit, and the land shall give its yield, and the heavens shall give their dew. And I will bestow on the remnant of the people of this people all these. And, there we go. And it shall be as you were cursed among the nations, house of Judah and house of Israel, so will I rescue you, and you shall become a blessing. Do not fear, and may your hands be strong. For thus says the Lord of armies, as I devised to do harm to you when your fathers infuriated me, so said the Lord of armies, and I did not repent. So I've again devised in these days to do good for Jerusalem and for the house of Judah. Do not fear. These are the things that you should do. Speak truth, each man to his neighbor, and render truth and justice in your gates. And do not plot evil in your hearts, each man against his fellow, and do not love a false vow. For all these do I hate, said the Lord. And the word of the Lord of armies came to me, saying, thus says the Lord of armies, the fast of the 4th month, and the fast of the 5th month, and the fast of the 10th month shall become a rejoicing for the house of Judah, and gladness and good festivals, and love, truth, and peace. So love, truth, and peace, I would translate it as. Thus says the Lord of armies, people and the dwellers of many towns shall yet come, and the dwellers of one town shall go to another, saying, let us go to entreat the Lord, and to seek the Lord of armies. I too shall go. And many peoples and vast nations shall come to seek the Lord in Jerusalem, and to entreat the Lord. Thus says the Lord of armies, in those days 10 people from all the tongues of the nation shall grasp the border of a Jew's garment, saying, let us go up with you. We have heard that God is with you. Okay? And that is Zechariah chapter 8. Very, very beautiful chapter, and a lot of famous verses in there, such as old people will walk on their canes or on their walking staffs, and boys and girls will play in the streets, in the plazas or in the streets of Yerushalayim, right? And a number of other verses that we saw, which are very famous. Okay, so that's our study for Zechariah chapter 8. Are there any questions? And are there any comments? Any questions or comments? If not, then what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, 5 to 10 minute break. I'm going to go feed my cat because he's going crazy. I'll give him his food, and the other cat, I'll give both my cats their food, and then we're going to dig into Leviticus chapter 25. Okay, so let me put it on pause for a second. We'll put some music up, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes or so, hopefully 5 to 10 minutes at the most, and then we will dig into we're going to dig into Leviticus chapter 25.
שחרחורתי קראוני צחייתי ומילת שמש קיץ בעלי שחרחורת יפית כל כך בעינייך אשמרת ליבי כולו שלך שחרחורתי קראוני כל יורדי אם פעמי קראוני שוב אליי שחרחורת יפית כל כך בעינייך אשמרת ליבי כולו שלך שחרחורתי בין לאמור אם עד פעמי יפית כל כך בעינייך אשמרת ליבי כולו שחרחורתי קראוני צחייתי ומילת שמש קיץ בעלי שחרחורת יפית כל כך בעינייך אשמרת ליבי כולו שלך שחרחורתי כל יורדי אם עד פעמי קראוני שוב אליך שחרחורת יפית כל כך בעינייך אשמרת ליבי כולו שלך שחרחורתי בין לאמור בעינייך בוערת ליבי כולו שלה.
Okay, we are back. We are back. Welcome back once again. Let me just turn off these banners here for 1 second. Okay, we're back. Once again, this is the World Alliance of Qara'im Torah Study. Oh, hi Martha. So nice to see you. So nice to see you. This is the World Alliance of Qara'im Torah Study. So welcome to the Torah study. We've been studying the book of Zechariah, the book of Zechariah, chapter 8. And now we're going to get into Leviticus. We're going to get into Leviticus chapter 25, which we've been studying now for a couple of weeks, and we'll continue studying for it. Let's see if there are any announcements. The usual announcements, I'll give the usual announcements. We do these weekly Torah studies, and we also have a membership structure that we set up. And if you remember, then, well, I should preface it by saying we're trying to raise money for the World Alliance of Qara'im because we have a lot of things planned. We really want to get a lot of things accomplished. We've already started doing regular meetings here in the Golan Heights, where I live in Israel. We have regular meetings, World Alliance of Qara'im meetings live. We want to set up a community. We want to set up eventually a learning center, a school. We want to publish material. We want to do all kinds of things. And in order to do that, we really do need your financial support. And I always say, anyone who knows me, and some of you have known me for years, if not decades, know that I am not a materialistic person, far from it. So this is not for me. This is for these programs that we want to do. This is really, as I mentioned at the beginning, at the opening statement that I made, things are happening here. Things are coming together. Karaism, Choser b'Tanach, returning to Tanakh, is becoming more and more acceptable. People are interested, even fascinated by it here in Israel. Things are happening in the worldwide scene, right? The war with Iran, something seems to be stirring that's heading very possibly towards a World War III, or even World War III / end of day scenario. So things are happening, and it's so important. I really mean this from the heart. It's so important that we as Karaites, we as Tanach-only, we as Chozim b'Tanach, return Tanakh people, get the word out now. It's really important for the future of ourselves, of our families, of the nation of Israel, the world at large. Okay, in order to do that, we need people to chip in financially. Right? We live in the real world. We can't do things. We can't publish things. We can't set up institutions. We can't set up schools. We can't set up any of this stuff unless we have financial support. I wish I were Elon Musk. Well, I don't wish I were Elon Musk. I wish I had as much money as Elon Musk, because then I could pour tons of money into the World Alliance of Qara'im, but I don't. So I need to rely on you guys. Okay. So once again, there are a number of ways to donate. Okay. The easiest way you can is to become a member. Okay. And I'll just post this once again. To become a member of the World Alliance of Qara'im, we're not asking for a lot of money. It's about the same price as you would pay for cell phone service in the United States. No, I'm sorry, it's half the price of what you would pay for a cell phone service in the United States. And if enough people do it, and some people have been kind enough to start doing so, then we can start raising some funds. And also, as a member, you also get certain membership privileges. You can be part of the private World Alliance of Qara'im WhatsApp membership group. We have private studies for the members, and in general, I just try to give more access to the paying members. Not because I don't care about the non-paying members, I very much do, but I myself have limited time, and I think it's only fair that those who are showing their dedication and their support to the World Alliance of Qara'im, putting their money where their mouth is, that those are the people who should have the most access. So I try to respond to their queries, speak to them when I can. We do special private studies for them, or we have a number of them in the works. And so please, if you haven't already, please join the World Alliance of Qara'im, become a member. Okay. The other thing is, once again, I know many people give parts of their salary, they tithe, or they give parts of their salary to charity or to good causes. And if you want to do that, and there are a number of ways that you can do that, I suggest looking at the link, the original advertisement for the study, and you'll see some of those ways. I'll just post the link for making a donation by debit or credit card. Okay, and you can make also a recurring donation if you wish in this way. Okay, so let me take this off the screen. Yeah, I'll take this off the screen. I'll put the other one on. Okay. So if you want to donate part of your salary, if you want to tithe to the World Alliance of Qara'im, if you want to donate any, I don't know, you're just got a big chunk of inheritance and you want to put it towards a good cause, or part of it towards a good cause, then please do so. Okay. This is the website. Okay. You can see it's bit.ly bit.ly/secure/whack/donate. So please copy it down or take a picture of it or whatever you need to do. And please support us. This is really going to make a huge difference because we really have a whole bunch of plans in the works, and we need the finances to be able to make them come true. Okay, so that's enough about that. Any other announcements? Like I said, we already have a live community here in Israel in the Golan Heights. We have regular meetings. We meet in person, and they're really lovely meetings. We study some Tanakh. We play music. We go out into the woods and we do a hike. We talk about Karaite related stuff. We discuss, debate, all of these kinds of things. And I'm doing my best to get the word out as best as I can and as much as I can. And yeah, that's all I got to say about that. Okay, so let's go on now to Leviticus chapter 25. Leviticus chapter 25. And let me share the screen. Okay. So there's a screen. I'll leave this up for a little while. I'll take it off. Okay, so we were talking about let's just recap in English. Okay, so we're talking about the Sabbath year. This is usually called in modern Hebrew or in later Hebrew, it's called the Shemitah year. And it's the seventh year, the seventh agricultural year, just as we rest every 7 days. That's called the Shabbat. That's what you guys, if you're in the United States or in the West, in that kind of part of the world, the Shabbat has already gone out here. But if you're in the United States, for instance, then that's what you're doing now, probably. And so that's every 7 days. We also have 7 weeks, right? We know that the Festival of Weeks, we count from the bringing of the Omer offering, the wave sheaf offering, okay, the elevation offering, where we bring the first fruits of the barley harvest. We know that we count from there 7 weeks from that Shabbat, and then the following day, in other words, 49 days after the bringing of the barley harvest, of the bringing of the Omer offering, the wave sheaf offering, is Shavuot, the festival week. So that's 7 weeks, right? That's 7 weeks. So there's a constant theme of 7, and so we have this here in the years. And well, let's just read it, and then we can talk about it in more detail. We've already studied this, but this is just again for review. Okay, so Yahweh said to Moses at Mount Sinai. You notice they're still in Mount Sinai here. It's already the end of Leviticus. They arrived to Mount Sinai in Exodus chapter 17, if I'm not mistaken, roundabouts there. And it's already Leviticus, end of Leviticus, and they're still at Mount Sinai, and they will be so well into the book of Numbers. And then they go on the move. Okay, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you, the land itself must observe a Shabbat to the Lord. Okay, so we observe a Shabbat every 7 days. The land of Israel observes a Shabbat, a year of rest every 7 years. It's beautiful, this parallelism. 7 weeks from the Omer offering, from the barley harvest, or from the first fruits of the barley harvest to the first fruits of the wheat harvest. 7 days, every 7 days we rest. Every 7 years, the land of Israel rests. And then we're going to see also the Jubilee year, which is 7 sets of 7 years. Right? There's a rest after that. And the parallelism, the structure, the symmetry between all this is just amazing. And we'll talk about that. Okay? So for 6 years, sow your fields, and for 6 years, prune your vineyards and gather their crops. But in the 7th year, the land is to have a year of Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Okay? And that's also what the regular 7 days Shabbat is called. It's Shabbat to Yahweh, Shabbat to God. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself, or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your male and your female servants, and the hired worker, and the temporary resident who live among you, as well as for your livestock and the wild animals in the land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. Okay? So in this seventh year, okay, what did we not do? It says explicitly, okay, do not sow your fields. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. And what this is talking about is reap, meaning cut it down to sell at market. In other words, you just let it grow on its own, and you're going to eat from whatever grows on its own, okay, for that seventh year. Okay. All right. And let's talk a little bit about, I think we're going to start off, I want to talk a bit about, we spoke about the Gezer calendar. I'm going to bring in something called the Gezer calendar. We spoke about it last week. It's an archaeological find, and I want to bring it in again. And I'll tell you why it's important. So the Gezer calendar, I'm just going to give a quick review. Okay, let me make sure you guys can see this. Let me get this off the screen. Okay, so the Gezer calendar is ostensibly the calendar with the oldest Hebrew inscription. Okay, so the Gezer calendar is a small limestone tablet with an early Canaanite inscription discovered in 1908. Doesn't matter when. I just want to get to the point here. We spoke about this last week. Scholars have divided whether it's Phoenician or Hebrew. Again, that doesn't matter. Okay, this is what we want to talk about. Okay, so the inscription is not a formal calendar, or it describes agricultural seasons with imprecise dates rather than precise divisions of time that would be required for a ritual or bureaucratic calendar. As such, some of the time units comprise 2 months rather than one, and none are referred to by the month numbers or names known for the other sources. So what is this saying? Okay, I'm just going to go straight to the English. Okay, so it's basically a calendar. A lot of scholars think it was for school kids to learn about the agricultural year, or for some other non-official purpose, right, as we just read about. But this is what it says, okay? It says a couple meaning two, so 2 months of gathering. And here we have in the notes, it's October, November, approximately. These are approximate dates. 2 months of early sowing seeds. 2 months. 2 months of late sowing. A month of making hay. A month of harvesting barley. A month of harvest and finishing. That's really talking about the wheat, the finishing of the wheat harvest, right? That's the last major grain to be harvested in Israel. It was only barley and wheat were the two main grains. Okay, a couple of months of vine pruning, and a month of summer fruit. Okay, so we have here a calendar. And again, this is dated to, when did we say? 10th century BCE, did we say? Let's see what we said. Yeah, dated to the 10th century BCE. Okay. So that's right around the time of David and Solomon. That's what we're talking about. So dated to approximately the time of David and Solomon. It was found in Gezer. Okay. Gezer was kind of a city. You can visit it today. There's a little picture of Gezer. That's the ruins of Gezer. And it is to the west of Yerushalayim. Great place to visit. So, so what does this show? Okay, this gives us an idea of the agricultural year in ancient Israel. And one of the things we see here is sowing. So sowing takes place in, what's going on here? One second here. Oh, I see. It goes off a little bit. So the early sowing and the late sowing, right, corresponds to, again, this is approximate, right, December through March. Okay, but it's the wintertime, basically. Okay, so you sow in the wintertime. The way the seasons work here in Israel is we have a dry season. Dry season lasts approximately from the holiday of Passover, Hakham, quote unquote Passover, until the holiday of Sukkot. So approximately April 15th through October 15th is the dry season in Israel. Between April 15th and October 15th, you're going to have very little rain. And in the middle of it, like in the summertime, you won't have any rain at all. If we get rain past, I would say, May 15th or so, it's extremely, extremely rare. Already we're in the dry season right now. It's April 18th, and we've had much less rain than we had, let's say, a month ago, or even a couple of weeks ago. So the dry season is from approximately April 15th to October 15th. That's when all the harvesting takes place. That's when you're first going to have the barley harvest. That's associated once again with Chag HaMatzot, with Passover, right? Then 7 weeks later, approximately, you're going to have the wheat harvest. That's associated with the holiday of Shavuot. That takes place in approximately the beginning of June. And then you're going to start harvesting all of the other fruits of Israel. Okay, so we're going to have the grapes, we're going to have the figs, we're going to have the dates, we're going to have the pomegranates, we're going to have the olives. And then that's going to culminate, even though the olive season lasts a little bit past it, but it's essentially all of that harvesting is going to culminate at Sukkot time. Sukkot is the harvest, the fall harvest festival. And after that, that's right around when the rains start. And while it's raining, you're not harvesting. What you're doing is you're planting, or you're letting the land rest. Okay, in the wintertime, you're planting the seeds for the next year. Okay, that's basically what you're doing. Okay, you're perhaps hoeing and plowing and getting the land ready, planting the seeds, but you're not doing any harvesting. So there's a clear division between the agricultural year, the 6-month agricultural year between Passover, and when I use the word Passover, I really mean Chag HaMatzot, but I'm just saying colloquially it's called Passover, and Sukkot, and so between Festival of Unleavened Bread and the Festival of Booths, of Tabernacles, 6 months, 6 months exactly, actually, right? From the 15th of the first month to the 15th of the 7th month. That's when Sukkot starts. And then you have 6 months that is not the agricultural season, that's the off season. It's the rainy season. And it's almost perfectly in line with the climate here in Israel. Okay, so the rains, again, I said, are going to stop right around April 15th. They're going to start right around October 15th. Anyone who lives in Israel or who has visited Israel a lot will know this. And so it's completely in line with the agricultural year. So the holidays, right? The holidays, the biblical holidays only last for 6 months. The first one is April 15th. The last one begins on October 15th. So they last for 6 months exactly, right? From beginning to beginning. And then you have the non-agricultural season. You have the off season. There are no biblical holidays between October 15th and April 15th during the rainy season, during the winter time. Really, there are only 2 seasons in Israel, summer and winter. Okay, there's no spring and fall. And you see you'll see kind of some elements of spring, but it's really part of the winter here. And the winters here in Israel, as they are in many Mediterranean climates, they're not cold and dead. The winter in Israel is when everything greens up, the wildflowers bloom, everything's green, everything is beautiful, and it's raining a lot, or it's raining somewhat. I won't say a lot because it's not like monsoon season or something like that, but it rains. It rains a fair amount, right? And in the summer and after April 15th, everything dries out. The land, all the plants and everything essentially becomes brown. Not the trees, but all of the grasses, the flowers, everything dries out. If you look across the land, everything looks brown and dried out, and there's no rain. And that's when we have the holiday season. That's when we have the 6-month agricultural year and the biblical holiday season. So the biblical holiday season coincides with the dry season, coincides with the agricultural season, meaning the harvesting. First the barley, the wheat, and then the fruits, culminating in the harvest festival of Sukkot when the rains are going to start again. Okay, so this is what we see. We see this pattern here in the Gezer calendar. Okay, and it's very important to know the pattern of the agricultural season. Hello, Phil. Hello, Phil. Oh boy, we got Phil and oh boy. Welcome, Phil. The current possible fertilizer shortage could cause massive starvation in some parts of the world. It could, ignoring Yah's clear instructions on the treatment of the land. Okay, thank you for that statement, Phil. So anyway, it's important to know this agricultural season when we talk about the the 7th year, the 7th Shabbat year, right? The 7th agricultural year, and it's going to be important to know about this also when we're going to speak about now the Jubilee year. Okay, so we're going to see something very interesting. Okay, so when it says 7 years, what does it mean? So first of all, we saw here, okay, just find it. So you shall not plant, and you shall not prune your grapevines. Okay, this is in the 7th year of rest. Not plant, you shall not prune your grapevines. So the pruning of the grapevines is done in the spring, in the early spring, right around now. I think even earlier, because if you don't prune the grapevines, then the grapes won't grow correctly. So this is talking about, right? So we saw from the Gezer calendar. So when is planting done? Right? We're just going to go by them. It's done in the wintertime, right? December, January, February. I think this is, I wouldn't agree with these dates exactly, but it's done essentially, let's say, December, January, February. Okay? Give or take. Okay? Pruning of the grapevines is in the early spring. It's before the dry season starts. It's already done at this point. Okay. And if we go back to the Gezer calendar, okay, here it says vine pruning in June, but I think it's some fruit. I think this really means here not pruning. I think this means the picking of the grapes. Okay, more. Yeah, it actually means the same thing here. So this is, I'm sorry, I shouldn't. They translate as prune, but it's a bad translation, right? It means the picking of the grapes. So ktsir is related specifically to grains, okay, basically to wheat and barley. Okay, so whatever is left over, so you didn't plant, so whatever is left over, right, whatever grows on its own, you should not harvest and sell at market. Okay, but right, so this is talking about the pruning of the. Okay, hold on a second. Let me just see. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I should say this differently. Okay, let me back up for 1 second. So this is not planting. This is the pruning of the grapevines, I believe. Okay, in the early spring. This is the harvest of the wheat, of the barley, and then the wheat. Okay, and this is the harvesting of the grapes, which is done usually around July, or something like that. Okay, so this is kind of going in order, more or less what we saw in the Gezer calendar. Okay, so this really here, when it says a couple of months of vine pruning, this is not talking about vine pruning. This is talking about vine harvesting. They're not really translating it correctly. Okay, it does say some. Okay, it doesn't matter. Anyway, this is really talking about vine harvesting because you're not going to prune your vines in July and August. Okay, you're going to prune your vines early in the year. At any rate, what we see is essentially a replay of the Gezer calendar, right? Planting, okay, pruning of the vines, the harvest of the barley and the wheat, and then the picking of the grapes. Okay, so that's what we see here, and that is very much in line with the Gezer calendar, right? So sowing plants, okay. We have the summer fruit or the vine picking, right, and then the summer fruit. We have the barley here, and then the wheat here, right? So there's a clear parallel between what we see here in this Gezer calendar and what we see here in Leviticus chapter 25. So let's just keep this in mind as we go further on, okay? Right, we're reading in the English, so let's just continue that. So the land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your male and your female servants, and the hired worker and temporary resident who live among you, as well for your livestock and the wild animals in your land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. Right. So in this year where we haven't planted in the previous year, and or in that winter time, right, and whatever grows on its own grows on its own, then this is going to be for yourself. But also we see, right, for those who are don't have the highest status in the society, the servants, the hired worker, the temporary residents. These are all the same classes of people that are protected. We saw in Exodus chapter 20 in the Shabbat, right? You don't work on the Shabbat, so your son, your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, your animals, and the ger that lives among you will not work. Okay, so this is for the poor people essentially, right? The leftover produce is not just for you. You have to eat also, of course, but you just leave it for the poor people. You don't pick it and then sell it at market. It's left, and anyone who needs it can come and take it, and the implication is without paying anything, right? That's what it's left for. It's given away for free. The land is fallow. It's left to rest. It's everybody's in a certain way in that year, and anyone who needs it can come and take it. It's not sown. It's given a rest, right? So it actually physically rests, and we know any farmer knows that the land needs to rest, okay, every so often. And so this is not only good for the land, but it also allows those who are poor to come and get what they need to get during that year, right? During that year of rest. Okay, so now we're going to start in chapter 8. Now we're talking about the Jubilee year, the Yovel, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Jubilee year. First of all, let me go back here and see if there are any questions or there are any comments. I don't see any at this point. Okay. So the Jubilee year. Okay, so we're in verse 8. Usafarta lecha sheva shabbatot shanim, sheva shanim sheva pamim. Okay, so you shall count for yourselves 7 Shabbat years. 7 years, 7 times. Okay, so what we have here is every 7 years is this Shabbat year. It's what we call in later Hebrew and in modern Hebrew the Shemitah year. This year when the land rests. That's every 7th year. Just like every 7th day we rest, every 7th year the land rests. Now we count 7 of those 7 years. That's a total of 49 years. Does that sound familiar? It should sound familiar because we saw that when you're, I think my cat wants to come in. Let me let him in. Come, Shosho. Did you eat? Come, baby. Now you're going to come rest. Okay? Come, baby. Okay. So remember this. In Exodus 23, we learned about the festival. We just spoke about the festival of Shavuot. So what do you do in Shavuot? You bring the Omer offering on Shabbat. You count 7 Shabbats. I'm sorry, not on Shabbat. On the day after the Shabbat, you bring the Omer offering. Then you count 7 Shabbats 7 times for a total of 49 days. And then the day after that, the 50th day, okay, is Shavuot. And that's when you bring the wheat, the first fruits of the wheat harvest. So we see this incredible symmetry here. This incredible symmetry, just as we count 7 weeks, 7 Shabbats. And then the following day is Shavuot, the festival of weeks. So here we count 7 groups of 7 years. We count 7 Shabbat years, and then the following year is the Jubilee year. So the Jubilee year is is in symmetry with the festival of weeks, with the festival of Shavuot, right? And each of these Shabbat years is, of course, in symmetry with each of those 7 Shabbats that are counted between the bringing of the Omer offering, the wave sheaf offering, and the holiday of Shavuot, the holiday of weeks, right? There's this incredible symmetry here, and it all revolves around 7. Right? And 7 sevens. Okay. So Safat lecha sheva Shabbatot shanim. So you should count for yourself 7 Shabbat years. Sheva shanim sheva pamim. 7 years, 7 times. Okay. Right? You guys see this incredible symmetry? It's amazing. It's just beautiful. It's so beautiful and it's so just and it's so righteous. I mean, there are almost no words for it. Because it's all about letting the land rest and letting the poor people have what they need to eat and so on. Okay. Okay. And so it shall be for you that these, or it's just pointing out, right? I'm just going to translate it literally. And it shall be for you that these 7 Shabbat years add up to 49 years, right? The Torah is just pointing it out, okay? That these 7 Shabbat years make up 49 years. And in, we'll see exactly when, okay? And you shall, so much to say here, my God, we can go on for hours, but I'll try to make it short. And in the 10th day of the 7th month, the 10th day of the 7th month is Yom Kippurim. It's the Day of Atonement, right? It's one of the 5 biblical holidays, one of the 5 Moadim. And what do? You shall avar shofar teruah. You shall make blasts on the animal horn heard throughout your land. Okay, well, actually, just pass it around is literally what it says, right? But I can't think of a good translation offhand. Let's see what Robert Alter does about that one. Send round. There we go. That's how he does it. And you shall send round a blasting ram's horn. That's a good translation. He always has good translations. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, on the day of atonement. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, B'Yom Kippurim. We said that's on the day of atonement. Ta'avirus shofar b'chol atzachem. You shall send round. I'll use his translation. A blast or a blast on the ram's horn, the sound of the ram's horn throughout your entire land. Okay. Ukidashtem et shnat the-chamishim shana. Ukaratem Torah ba'aretz l'chol yoshveha. And you shall sanctify the 50th year. Ukaratem Torah ba'aretz, and you shall declare freedom throughout your land to all its inhabitants. Where does this phrase appear? We spoke about it last week. This phrase appears on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, right? Liberty Bell. Okay. So there it is. I don't know if you can see it here. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit. You can kind of see it. Proclaim liberty. Boom. You can't see the rest of it, but that's what it says, right? Let's get the exact phrase. Out of this. Right? On the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. Let's see if we can find it here. Okay. Here. So the bell was commissioned in 1752 by Pennsylvania Provincial Assembly from the London-based firm Lester and Pack, later renamed whatever, it doesn't matter. It was cast with the lettering, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. Right? So that is, this verse is what is engraved or emblazoned or whatever you would call it, is what is imprinted, enshrined on the Liberty Bell. You should proclaim liberty throughout the land for all its inhabitants. Okay? And this happens on the 10th day of the 7th month of the 49th year. And it's speaking about the 50th year. Okay? So Yovel he. It's a Jubilee year. Okay? And there are different understandings of what the word Jubilee means. We'll talk about it. Okay? It really means a blast on the horn. We're going to talk about it in a second, but let's leave it as Jubilee. Okay, it's a Jubilee year. Yovel hi ti'eh lechem v'shaftem ish el achuzato ve'ish el mishpachto tashuvu. Okay, so you shall. Let me just translate this. It's a Jubilee year for you, and each person shall return to his inheritance, to his plot of land. Every Israelite in the Torah is given a plot of land. And that plot of land, as we shall see, can never be taken away from that Israelite. It can be rented out for a while, but in this Jubilee year, in this 50th year, it goes back to that person. So there's no such thing as a landless Israelite. There's no such concept. Every Israelite, right, the land of Israel is an inheritance for all of the people of Israel. And so every person, that doesn't mean that the government, like in today, modern Israel, the government of Israel owns 97% of the land. There's a very small percentage of the land, about 3%, which can be privately owned. It's called tabu. It's from Turkish Ottoman law. But 97% of the land of the state of Israel is owned by the government of Israel. And so you can never actually purchase land in Israel. All you can do is make long-term leases. So you can make I think it's a 99-year lease that they give, but you cannot purchase land. It's all owned by the state of Israel because the founders of the state of Israel were communists. This was set up originally as a communist country. You guys have all heard of a kibbutz, right? The kibbutz, the word kibbutz, it means a collective. Okay, it's a coming together. It's a collective, and that's exactly what communism is, right? Communal collectivity. So this still has many elements, much less than when I first came here in 1993, and by the time I came here in 1993, it had already, become less than it was before I ever got here. But if you go back into like the 1950s and I guess really up until after the Yom Kippur War, so 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, even in, let's say up into the 70s, really, I guess up until I don't know exactly when, but it was like a communist state essentially. It was a communism. Was socialism, one should say. Lots of elements of communism and socialism. Let's put it that way. Okay. So on this 50th year, on this Jubilee year, okay, each person returns to his own land inheritance. Okay. Verse 11, Yovel hi shnat chamishim shanati elechem. So this 50th year shall be the Jubilee year for you. Which translates a little bit better. Yovel hi shnat chamishim shanati elechem. It is the Jubilee. It is the Yovel hi shnat chamishim. This 50th year is the Jubilee year. That is kind of I can only translate it word for word. To translate into English, it doesn't really work. But okay, we'll go to Robert Alter again. It's getting late, so I can use him as a bit of a crutch. Okay, it is a Jubilee, the 50th year it shall be for you. Okay, fine, good enough. Okay, so Lo tizra v'lo tiktzeru et seficheha v'lo tifzeru et nizireha. Okay, so once again, we here, do not plant, do not harvest grain, or do not harvest the that which grows on its own of grain. V'lo tifzeru et nizireha, and do not harvest the vine, okay, the leftover of the vine, okay, the leftover grapes on the vine. Okay, verse 12, Ki yovel hi, because it's the Jubilee year, kodesh tiyeh lechem, it shall be holy for you. Minasadet tochlu et tfota. Okay, and so you shall eat it from the field, whatever grows wild. The field means that which grows wild, or that which grows on its own. Essentially, is what it's saying, right? So there's no domestication, there's no planting for agriculture for that year. And this is now 2 years in a row, because the 49th year was a Shabbat year. Okay, the 49th year was the seventh of the seven Shabbat years in that series of 7, and then now there's going to be another year. The 50th year is also going to be another Shabbat year, right? So there are 2 years in a row. So if we start from the cycle, right, the 7th year, we start from a cycle of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We plant regularly and harvest regularly. 7th year is a Shabbat year. 14th year is a Shabbat year, and so on until we get to the 49th year. That's a Shabbat year. In the seventh month, on the 10th day of that Shabbat year, that 49th Shabbat year, we blast a shofar, we blast a ram's horn throughout the land. We proclaim freedom throughout in the land for all its inhabitants. And then that next year, that 50th year, is also a year in which the land rests. So it's 2 years in a row, and then the cycle renews itself. Okay, so it's really a beautiful cycle. Let's look a little bit at Robert Alter, and we'll get some interpretation here. Okay, where are we starting? We're not going to start here. Let's yield. Okay, send round. So here we go. Send round. This is the blasting of the shofar. This verb is chosen because what is suggested is that the ram's horn is to be carried around the country from place to place by delegated heralds and to be appropriately sounded so that everyone will know that the Jubilee year has arrived. Okay, call a release to all its inhabitants. One must regretfully forego the grandeur of the King James Version inscribed on the Liberty Bell, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. In fact, the passage is concerned with the legal arrangements regarding property in the Jubilee year, and modern scholarship has persuasively demonstrated that Torah does not mean liberty, but is a cognate with the technical Akkadian term anduraru, which means a release form or moratorium on debts or indenture. Right, fair enough. The fact of the matter is nobody knows exactly what this word dror, which is translated again as liberty, really means, but this works well. It's probably better than liberty, right? So he translates it as a release. Okay, Jubilee. So remember, we don't know exactly what the word Jubilee means, but we'll talk about it. Though scholarly debate persists about the etymology of this word, which is entered into English from the Hebrew, the noun Yovel in Exodus 19:13 clearly indicates a ram's horn. The alternate term is shofar, and that is plausible. The 50th year was called Jubilee Yovel because this was when loud blasts of the ram's horn were sounded throughout the land, and that's what I believe as well, right? I think it's pretty clear. Okay, so we have the Yovel in Exodus 19:13, which means the ram's horn. And here we know that on the 10th day of the 7th month of that 49th year, that we have that the ram's horn is blasted. It's mentioned twice. It's blessed on the ram's horn, right? So that's almost definitely what that means. Okay. So what else do we have here? Any other commentary? Its yield. This is just a technical term. We don't have to worry about that. Okay, so you shall go back each man to his holding without the notion of inalienable property holdings. The whole system of permanent division of the land according to tribes and then clans would have broken down. On the other hand, the arrangements for the Jubilee release entailed the most cumbersome complications, as verses 16 to 17 concede. We'll get to that. And once the tribal territories had disappeared as historical fact in the Second Temple period, the rabbis devised a legal mechanism that in effect abrogated the Jubilee. Okay. So that is that. Let's go ahead a little bit more and then we will stop. So any questions, any comments so far about this Jubilee year? Anybody? Right, but it's a very beautiful thing. Okay. So 13. So in this Jubilee year, each person will return to his native land inheritance, right? So again, every native-born Israelite gets a permanent inheritance in the land that can never be taken away from him. Okay, it's his for eternity. If he has children, then it's split up between his children, and then the subdivisions. It's like subdividing a plot of land, right? Yes, it gets smaller and smaller, but it's everyone. The concept of the land of Israel is, or this concept for the relationship of the people of Israel to the land of Israel, is that everyone has a portion of the land of Israel that can never, ever be taken away from them. Okay? All right, verse 14. And if you have sold a land sale to your fellow man, to your fellow Israelite, or you've bought one from your fellow Israelite, okay? No one you should not take advantage of him. Okay, no person should take advantage of another person. And what does that mean? We're going to see here specifically in verse 15. So according to the number of years after the Jubilee, okay, shall you purchase it from your fellow Israelite, and I'll explain exactly what this means in a second. But and according to the number of years of harvests, shall he sell it to you. Okay, so the idea is this. Okay, again, because there's no permanent sale of land in the land of Israel, it's only because on the Jubilee year, on this 50th year, all of the land goes back to. Let me just drink for a second, please. All of the land goes back to its original owners. Because of that, you're not really buying the land. You're essentially buying a certain number of harvests, right? We're talking about agriculturalists back in the day, right? You're essentially buying a certain number of harvests because you wouldn't buy land and, really unless you were going to use it for farming or for shepherding or something like that. So let's say a plot of land is worth, I don't know, $1 million, okay? If I were going to buy this plot of land from you, I would pay you $1 million, or you're selling it to me for $1 million, okay? If we lived in the ancient land of Israel, okay, we know that I'm not buying it from you permanently. That $1 million is only going to get me until the next Jubilee year. So If we're in the middle of the cycle, let's say 25 years into the cycle, and there are only another 25 years until the Jubilee year, then what the Torah is saying is you don't sell the other person the land for $1 million. He's only getting half of the use of the land, right? If it would have been $1 million for, let's say, eternity or whatever, then you're going to, or for 50 years, then you're going to sell it to him for $500,000 because he only has 25 years left until that land has to be returned. So if it were right at the beginning of the cycle, right after the Jubilee year, and you knew he had 50 years to hold on to the land, then you would sell it to him for $1 million. Okay, or 49 years to hold on to the land, you would sell it to him for $1 million. If it's in the middle of the cycle, it's the 25th year, you're going to sell it to him for $50,000, $500,000. If there's only 1 or 2 years left, right, then I'd have to do the math, but I guess 2/50ths, so 4% of $1 million is going to be 40,000. So you would sell it to him for $40,000 because he's only going to get 2 harvests out of it before the Jubilee year comes, and it goes back to its original landowners. It goes back to those who permanently own it. So once again, the point here is that there's no permanent ownership of the land except for those who are part of that land, that plot of land's inheritance, and that's divided by tribe and clan and subclan and house of fathers and so on. Okay. Verse 16. Lefi rov hashanim tarbe miknato lefi mi'ot hashanim tiam'it miknato. So according to or I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it because it doesn't work word for word, but if there are more years, okay, you shall increase its price, and if there are fewer years, you shall reduce its price. Okay. Because what actually that person is selling to you is the number of harvests, because it's not going to be yours forever. It's going to go back to him. So essentially what you're purchasing is the number of harvests you can get out of it. Okay. So no person should take advantage of another person and of his fellow man, his fellow Israelite. In other words, if you try to jack up the price and try to sell it to the other person as if he's going to have the land forever, then you're taking advantage of him. If he's only going to have it for 5 years or 10 years or 25 years or 30 years, the price has to be reduced. There has to be a discount based on the number of harvests he's going to get out of that land. Okay, and here we bring in God once again. V'yareta me Elohecha ki ani Yahweh Elohechem, and you shall fear your God, because I am Yahweh your God. We see this once again. This ki ani Yahweh your God. We've spoken about something called the holiness code. Okay, from Leviticus chapter 17 through Leviticus chapter 25, where, and let's just bring this up again. Not through 25 to 26. So the holiness code is used in biblical criticism. It doesn't matter. When I don't believe in biblical criticism, we're not going to get into it, but nonetheless, it's making an important point that this language is repeated a lot between Leviticus chapter 17 and 26, and sometimes passages in other books, blah, blah, blah. It is so called due to its highly repeated use of the word holy, kadosh. Okay. The term holiness code, it doesn't matter. We don't need any of that, blah, blah, blah. And what it's, let's see here. This is what I want to get to, okay? The holiness code also uses a noticeably different choice of vocabulary, repeating phrases such as I, Yahweh, am holy, I am Yahweh, and I am Yahweh who makes you holy an unusually large number of times. Additionally, Leviticus 17 begins with, this is the thing which Yahweh has commanded, saying, and Leviticus 26 strongly resembles the conclusion of a law code despite the presence of, okay, that's already getting a bit technical. Professor Christine Hayes, who I highly recommend listening to. She is a professor at Yale University, and she's amazing. She has a whole YouTube series on the Tanakh, on the Old Testament, and she's great. Listen to her, Christine Hayes. I've listened to actually that series many times over. Professor Christine Hayes discusses the difference between the holiness code and the rest of Leviticus. And the holiness code, Israel itself is regarded as holy, not just the priestly class. This theme and the exhortation, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy, etc., etc. Okay, enough. Let's go back to this. Okay, so it doesn't say I am holy here, but it does have the phrase, which we see a lot of times throughout between Leviticus chapter 17 and Leviticus 27. Okay, because I am Yahweh your God. So fear your God, because I am Yahweh, your God, or I, Yahweh, am your God. Okay? All right? So don't take advantage. When you sell the property, you keep in mind how many harvests, how many years the person is going to be able to hold on to the property before it returns to you, and you adjust the price accordingly. Okay? So I think we're going to stop here. Let me see. Yeah, I think we're going to stop here. It's been a long study. We've been going at it for almost 3 hours. And we've covered a lot of things. So I think we are going to stop right here. So before we stop, are there any questions or are there any comments? Any questions or any comments, anybody, before we stop? Okay. If not, then I'm going to thank you for joining us on the study. Hope you enjoyed it. So just to review, we learned chapter 8, and actually let me make a note for myself for next week. So we are in Zechariah. We're going to start with Zechariah chapter 9. And then we are going to start in Leviticus 25, verse 18. Verse 18. Okay, there we go. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the study. And I hope you join us each week on these Shabbat studies. I always post them. If you're not in the World Alliance of Qara'im announcements group, then you can join it. If you look at the description or in the description of this study, whether you're looking at it on YouTube or on Facebook, then you can see, if you go down, connect with us, then you'll see there's a World Alliance of Qara'im WhatsApp group, WhatsApp announcements group. And you can join us there, and you'll always get announcements for these studies. I also post it on Facebook on the World Alliance of Qara'im page and the World Alliance of Qara'im group. And of course, if you're a member, you get it in the World Alliance of Qara'im members group. So that's about it. I thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the study. Once again, I hope you consider supporting us financially by joining, by becoming a member, or by tithing or giving us a donation. We're only going to use it towards good and important things. And other than that, that's all I have to say for today. So once again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. This is Hakham Melech Rahmiel ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov wherever you are in the world. And we are going to go out, as we usually do, with some music. So thanks once again, and I will see you guys soon.
心灵深处，拥抱着一个渴望。我们的眼睛朝向东方，远远地眺望夕阳山。我们不会失去2000年的希望，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷。在心灵深处，拥抱着一个渴望。我们的眼睛朝向东方，远远地眺望夕阳山。我们不会失去2000年的希望，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安和耶路撒冷，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安和耶路撒冷。我们不会失去2000年的希望，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安和耶路撒冷，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西